we're back with part 2 of this week's Melbourne Pro Punters Panel, and if you haven't been to the One to Follow Facebook page, make sure you head over there and give them a like, so that way you'll get all the latest info that comes out, and you can head to One to Follow to grab Potts' set for tomorrow at Sandown and Mornington this weekend. I'm not off to Mornington, I'm off to Benalla Cup Day on Saturday, so that'll be interesting. There'll be way too many bookies for me at Mornington. Hopefully they get a crowd there. It's normally a pretty good day down there, but there are a hell of a lot of bookies at Mornington. They love going there for some reason. I can't understand it. So
that's a positive for racing, though.
It's very competitive.
I just think it adds to the colour of the day.
Oh.
There's nothing worse walking to a racetrack now and you see one bookmaker.
Well, you love the trots, Mick.
Yep.
And it is tough now going to a joint like Melton, and essentially you're going to a large, almost suburban pub type setup where there's one, maybe two bookies stuck over there in the corner, and half the time you wouldn't even know that they're there. And the worst thing is they put the pool table in front of them.
Well, I remember the days when I first come down from Ballarat.
Yeah.
We'd finish training at Collingwood
on
a Monday night and go to the Meadows. There was a horseshoe mentality of bookmakers.
Olympic Park or the Meadows?
Olympic Park.
Yeah.
There was 3 bookmakers at stages and 2 bookmakers down in the dungeon where you used to have a beer.
Yeah.
It was just fascinating. Now you walk into, say, the Meadows now and there's one bookmaker or none at all. Yeah. That's how it's transformed, and it's a battle of wills.
Yeah.
I always used to love walking in with me 300 or 200 or 100, didn't matter.
Yeah.
And think, well, there's a bookmaker put up 6 to 4 something, I thought was evens and I'd take the value, or if it was 10 to 1 I thought it'd be a $6 chance and I thought, well, I'd take the value. But walking up to the tote window is just not the same.
No.
It's just fascinating. It's that part that you really do get annoyed nowadays to say, well, why is bookmaking a dying race? Why aren't we getting people to the racetrack? I used to go to Terang.
What's your answer? Why do you think? What's your?
I think just because we've become comfortable as people in life. This has destroyed it.
Yeah.
A lot of aspects of it. I've always been a believer in, the verbal communication.
Yeah.
I love eyeballing blokes when I talk to people. That's how you build up respect and trust amongst people you meet. Whereas you can hide behind a facade and a text message nowadays. I don't like that. I've never been that type of guy.
Yeah.
I've been front and centre wherever I go. I just prefer to put yourself out there and meet new people. And over a period of time you build relationships with those people, build on trust and respect. Whether I'm old-fashioned, I don't know, but that's the way I am. But I remember going to, Terang on a New Year's Day with my family. Dad and Mum would pack our kids up and all the cousins would go. We'd have a big day out, even though Burren Beat was on.
Yeah.
We felt the Terang landscape was a lot better for us as kids to run around. Mum and Dad and the dads of my other cousins could go and have a bet. The mums could sit on the lawn, they'd make all the sandwiches. We'd have a great family day. But a huge part of it was to go and see the horses parade, walk into the betting ring, see who's being backed. You'd walk past a few of the trainers and you'd say to Jeff Murphy and say, Jeff, can you win today on Boxing Day at Geelong? Jeff would probably, you're too young to bet. The characters of those situations are not in racing anymore, because we're not getting people to the racetracks, and I just really believe you lose that connection.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. I think those characters exist, but they're all sitting in their lounge rooms.
They're sitting in their lounge rooms.
And it is
there's nothing better.
I think that where it grew from is the administrators have always been in love with the revenue they get from betting, but they've never been in love with the reputation associated with betting.
Yeah.
And they were too eager, blindly probably, to let control of it go and allow all these bookmakers initially to become licensed in the Northern Territory and other jurisdictions. So then that became, they tried to push it aside at first, and then it just grew and grew and grew, and now that they've got a huge problem, they don't know how to undo it, the mess they've made. And they've decided to embrace it and go, oh well, the ones that we license, the ones that are on course and everything, we don't really like them anyway.
They're a nuisance.
They're a nuisance.
They're always whinging about something. We'll just put them out the way, or we'll leave them there, and hopefully they'll go away.
And we'll keep copying this revenue from the corporates.
You don't learn nothing at home, as far as I'm concerned. You might in front of Betfair and watch Money Trends and all that, even that can tell a story sometimes the other way. But when you're at a racetrack, you can get familiar with who's connected to who.
Yeah.
So that's the great part I felt going to the racetrack, to say, well, and I use that Terang experience, knowing Johnny Sadler from that district would bring a team of horses on New Year's Day, wanted to win in front of his family, his mum, etc. And then he'd get connected with Paul Riley, who was his jockey, and Dan O'Sullivan at that stage was more or less his 2IC. So as a young kid, you'd see who would be backed and why. So from an educational standpoint, you'd sit, you'd observe, you'd say, They're here for a reason. They back their horse, and generally there'd be a plunge associated with it. So every time you went to a form guide back then, you'd say, "Oh, Sadler's got a horse in today. He's taken it to Bendigo. It's Metropolitan Cup Day.
Yeah.
Robert Smurden the same." That's when they can have a bet here, but also can have a bet in Sydney.
Yeah.
Better watch the market on this, because I've seen them in my own eyes have a bet at Terang on a knob tab meeting. What are they going to do when the market is much more accessible to having a bigger bet? So you educate yourself by basically being at the track. You don't do that in your own household now, because you don't know who's there, who's doing what.
Well,
no, it's all become. It is the market's become a lot harder to read for that exact reason.
100%.
Because you just don't know who's behind what.
Absolutely.
And the other the sort of education point of it now is, if you look at the education that the youngsters in a lot of ways are getting now, is it's by this enormous amount of corporate advertising you have now that's just jamming it down the kids' necks. And it's probably that's the other thing that it hasn't helped the corporates, is that they've got a lot of people offside simply with the volume of advertising that they do.
What I've found, obviously being involved in footy and trying to teach kids to play footy, coaching under 11s, and they're too young to bet, we know that, but then you're involved in the senior body, the 18, 19, 20-year-olds that just come into the system, they like racing. I'll tell you what they like more, they love a multi-bet.
It's
connected
massive.
to a multi-bet, connecting to an AFL footy team, an NBA, an EPL, and maybe throwing a horse.
Yeah.
So that's the landscape that I'm dealing with right now, which is totally different to what I'm used to.
Yep.
And you have to adjust your communication lines on the back of what they want to hear. Because if we're just talking race 1, number 2, race 2, number 4, race 6, number 6, we lose those kids.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we build that connection to get them back to racing and racing alone.
It's. I've mentioned this on the show before, Mick, and I think it has still surprised many of the older people that watch. Sportsbet now hold more on the NBA than they do on the AFL.
Wow.
Now, if you'd said that to the bookies over here even 5 years ago, they would have laughed at you. Yep. But it's not as if they
what do? They hold more on the NBA
than across the season. They'll hold more on NBA than they will on AFL or NRL for that matter. Because the thing is, there's not that much product for AFL or NRL, whereas NBA goes for 7 or 8 months a year, and it's on TV at a great time. And even if they can't watch it, they can all watch the score updates on their phone. Half of them have got NBA League Pass, where this is something where the AFL racing's moved a long way ahead in the last little while with the implementation of racing.com, where it's now much easier to watch a decent quality picture on your phone if you want to watch the races on your phone, because that's how most of the younger guys now they're either watching it on a tablet or on a smaller screen. And that's where the AFL have dropped the ball this year, because they've got their AFL Live Pass that's essentially set up for the smaller iPhones. So if you try and watch it on an iPad, you can only still see it in the same size screen as what the iPhone is. I mean, surely they send enough blokes on these junkets to go and learn about this stuff. Go and look at Major League Baseball, go and look at the NFL, go and look at the NBA, and they've all got relatively inexpensive, very high quality HD streaming of all their games. Give them what they want. And it's the same with racing, because we've had this for... How long have we had this where we've been bluing about TV rights and who should be covering it? The fact that you still have to pay that couple extra dollars a month to get Sky 2, which, let's face it, most of the product on Sky 2 is not worth paying for anyway. Why do we still have to pay for that? All that should just be given to the punters. Give the punters whatever they need to bet. If they need the pictures of that, give it to them. It just frustrates me that some of these sporting bodies aren't thinking about what the customer actually needs.
What can racing do to attract a crowd again? We see the advent of Big Bash and what it's done for cricket. Kids, families, it's in a short time frame, it's affordable, people love getting there. Well, now, getting home at 10 o'clock at night is no issue for a young 7 or 8 or 9-year-old kid. They're entertained, they're not tired, they are still active participants in the game, even though they're not playing. Well, what can racing do to bring people back through the turnstiles? That's the one that I want to know.
I'll give you my working example of what I've noticed lately. It's harder to go to the races on the weekends than what it is during the week. The Sandown meetings during the week are brilliant. They're half an hour gaps. They start at 1:30 and they finish at 5 o'clock. Brilliant. I get to Geelong on Saturday, and the last 2 races have got 42 and 40-minute gaps in between them. Now, there's no one there. The VOP doesn't come through till 20 minutes before, so there's no prices up. There's hardly any betting going on. the only reason we have these vast gaps, and it's the same on Sundays, is because of this more is more mentality that we've had handed down from the tab, that we just need to keep putting races on. Well, the time slots are so full now that you have to have these gaps to fit all these races in so that they don't clash. Victoria have at least taken a step in the right direction, but they have to condense the race day. That's why the picnics are so popular. They're cheap to get into. The food's generally supplied by community groups, so the money's going back into the community and people feel like they're making a difference. They can bring their own food and grog if they want to within reason. You can get right up close and personal to the horses. There's also plenty of kids' activities, and you're there for 3.5 hours, max. And that, as you say, Nick, that's what you have to do to pitch to keep the young people. They don't have an attention span of 6 or 7 hours anymore.
Did you go to Cranbourne the other week when there was a trot meeting coinciding?
Yeah, I went to the. Yeah,
how
was
that received?
Reasonably well. There was a reasonable crowd there. It's always difficult when it's a rescheduled meeting like that, because that was a cup meeting that was abandoned when the whole joint blew away.
Yep.
I spoke to. There were 3 trot bookies there that night. I spoke to them. They were holding next to no money on the trots, and there was a little bit of cash around for the gallop stuff for the bloke who I was working for, and it was helped by having Sean's guide and there might have been 1 or 2 others there that were betting for the syndicates, but without them, a lot of the time you're just not holding that much money. There was a reasonable crowd there. There was plenty out on the front lawn, but I think for somewhere like Cranbourne, it was also just, it's a night out, it's something to do out there, and I think that's why they got a reasonable crowd there, but they just weren't betting.
The younger generation go to the races, and if they do, they probably don't even entertain the local tab or the totalised tote board, or they're on their phone.
Yeah. I won't even
That's what they're doing.
I won't even get into this of where we're at with the tote houses at some of these tracks you go to now. It's, well, Geelong on Saturday, there was none of the tote windows behind the betting ring were open, so you either had to run into the stand or run into the other stand to try and have a bet with the tote, and it was 50 metres away. So that just makes, it's little things like that make life hard, and it's not having enough operators.
For me to give a mixed question and answer, I think the journey's out of the box. It's going to be very hard to get the young ones to re-engage with racing. So if you want to do it, you're going to have to really put some effort into it.
Yeah.
And I think if you're trying to get some of that crowd that's interested in 2020, for instance, you need to target a particular time of year where you can run something as a season that's a bit niche and a bit different to what's normal. Maybe 6 race cards with 20-minute gaps. Give them a reason to bet on course. So
jockeys wouldn't have a problem with that from an occupational health and safety issue?
Well, they'd have to be special conditions. They probably can only ride every second race.
Or you just weigh out for race 2 before race 1, which they've done when they tried the 20-minute gaps at Cranbourne.
Okay.
Yeah, so there would be logistical problems, and they'd have to work out a way through it. I'm saying if you were going to try and pitch a product, and it'd have to be a 10-week season or whatever, or a shortened period. Like one of the problems is where racing loses so many people, and particularly the younger generation, is the 365 days basically, or minus a couple.
We're going close to it now.
Every a common answer with an 18-year-old kid is, why would I pay money to go into somewhere that I'm going to lose my money anyway?
Yeah.
So just open up the gate sometimes.
Yeah.
You see
AFLW,
AFLW, first night, you're 22,000 people, free admittance, they come from everywhere. Now, none of football purists, they're there for the entertainment aspect of it, and more importantly, it was for free. I don't know why Racing Victoria in their wisdom just don't have that decision to have a look at it, give it a small sample size. Is it going to affect our return bottom line? I wouldn't have thought, because I'll get it back the other end.
Especially if you're doing a condensed thing that might be over 8 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever it might be. Just free of charge, and give them some form of bonus for betting on course. So even if they're using their phone and betting with a corporate, maybe there's some promotion code they can use that gives them an odds boost for being on course or whatever it might be. I don't really know, but I'm sure.
A couple of good examples that I've seen lately, and a couple of things that I tried. I went to stall about 5 or 6 Fridays ago, Nick. It was hot. They threw the gates open. Come on in. Not only was it free to get in, everyone got a free sausage, because what the club said, well, we're better off making a $1,000 donation to the Lions Club and getting them to come in and cook a barbecue than we are to pay a caterer $1,000 to come and do it. Everyone got a free sausage or a hamburger. They went down and spent $200 at the supermarket and bought a whole heap of icy poles. Everyone on the course got an icy pole, and when they decided it was too hot for the kids' activities, they turned the sprinklers on and said, "Kids, run under." There must have been 400 or 500 people there that day at a Friday meeting at school. Granted, it was probably still in the school holidays, but like normally you go to the midweek meetings now and there's 8 people there.
Yeah.
Like they're industry participants, or there's no one, or they're just pensioners with a day out. That's all. So to see that many families getting on because it was cheap, and I think the other thing that we can do with if we try a condensed sort of 2020 style, and to make it easier for the jockeys too, Pots, is we go right. We'll keep it at 8 horse fields. Plus emergencies. There's 8 jockeys in each race. They each ride in each race. They have a particular colour, so they don't have to change the silks each time. And each jockey's part of a team. And then the team accrues points, so that at the end of the 10-week season, we then have a grand final, or there's a prize, or there's a cash bonus or something. And you can also bet on which team's going to win the series over the 10 weeks.
I'm pretty sentimental when it comes to some race clubs that work their butts off to try to deliver a product that's, one, sustainable, but more importantly, connecting to the people that go on a particular day.
Yep.
As we've witnessed recently, we've got a lot of Sunday cups. Now, I was up at Mildura, as you know, a couple of weeks ago to do a punters club in a marquee. Now, the crowd was okay without being brilliant. I reckon the Mildura Racing Club are in a probably conundrum right now to say, what do we do with this day? I think it was their second year that they've done it on a Sunday.
It was the second year that they've moved it from that late July, early August period to Labor Day.
So straight away you say to yourself, did it work? They might be happy with it. If it didn't work, what could we do? Do we actually try to lobby to maybe get that meeting coinciding with the Australia Cup Day?
Yep.
So people in Mildura, rather than going to the local pub or the local tab, they go to the racetrack.
Yep.
They connect with the best horses at Flemington, watch Humidor win the race.
Yep.
They're actually there for the locals as well.
Yep.
I reckon that potentially could swell the crowd. When you see them working so hard, and they probably anticipating a crowd of 2,500, 3,000, 4,000, I don't know what their numbers were, but just walking through the crowd, I don't think there was that many. Whereas I used to grow up in Ballarat and I'd have a 2-day carnival, the Wednesday and the Thursday was just simply magnificent. When you're in the middle of the week, then it's up to the established or the councils or whatever who makes the decision to have a half-day holiday. Work in the morning, finish at 12, race meeting starts at 1, put your suit on, frock up, away you go. Get on the sauce, or even make the next day potentially a half-day morning holiday, so they can let their hair down in the local pubs that night, which is good for the economy. Everyone has a drink. They've been to the races. I think everyone wins in that situation. So I think they've got some decisions to make for the country cups on Sundays.
I think, especially with a town like Mildura, Mick, I think they're far better off moving that to a Friday and then having the, as you say, make it a 2-day carnival again, have the cup meeting first, and then just have your run-of-the-mill Saturday meeting on a Saturday that coincides with the Australian Cup, and give them the half-day holiday on the Friday, because I don't think there's no point giving Mildura, because what it's gazetted is, if you don't have a local cup holiday, you then get Melbourne Cup Day off.
Right.
So I think most of the people in Mildura would cop half a day on Friday and then half a day on Melbourne Cup Day, because let's face it, unless you're going to do something on Melbourne Cup Day, if you knocked off at midday or 1 o'clock on Melbourne Cup Day, you've still got plenty of time to go and have some lunch and find somewhere to watch the race if you're not going home.
Yeah.
So I know it's worked really well in Wodonga, and hopefully we are seeing the swing away from some of these Sunday country cups, because for mine, and looking from a wagering point of view, especially on course-wise, they're not working anymore.
Yeah, well, geographically, Mildura's in the guts of either travelling to Melbourne for 4 hours with your horses or just over to Adelaide the next day, Adelaide Cup Day. So owners, trainers, they've got a decision to make. But what we can't afford to do is go to a Mildura Cup meeting, look at race 1, look at race 2, look at race 3, combine the numbers of runners. We're dealing with about 17 runners in 3 races. That to me is not good enough. It doesn't engender you to having a bet, because generally if bookmakers want to put up 140% for the person that knows the marketplace what you should be doing as opposed to what you shouldn't do, they won't bet.
And the other thing with that, and I mentioned it to you when I saw Mick up there at Mildura, those, and it's not quite Mildura, and it is tough to get horses up there because they're a long way away. Also, they had Eden Hope and Warrnambool within a couple of days of that meeting, which is sort of calling on the same horse pool. But they were some of the lowest maidens I've ever seen. Like, they were picnic standard maidens. And it's no fault of the club, it's just they were sort of a victim of circumstances. But you look at the success of the Swan Hill Carnival and what they've done there with the Golden Topaz and having some of those other Vobis races up there, they've really built that up. and that Friday meeting is as good as what the Sunday meeting is.
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting here listening to you guys, and it's the passion
Yeah.
for racing in these country cups comes through so strong. And you mentioned before that when the first race meeting you went to with your family's horse, and I think you said Family Man.
Family Man, 1977, Brent Thompson beat Raffendale Roy Higgins.
And that magic that you would have experienced when you walked onto the course that day and seeing Family Man, a great famous horse. And we've had Howard Walder recently, and when we had Rexy on, we've had a bunch of guests, and every one of them talks about when they're a young kid.
Yeah.
And the first time they walk onto the race course, and the majesty and the magic of it hit them, and they had an experience that had them hooked for life.
Mate, I hadn't seen a grandstand. And I was climbing the Moonee Valley grandstand to the highest floor, but then the ladders that led up to the commentator's box, and Bill Collins grabbed me. Now, I felt like I was royalty that day, and I was only 10.
Yeah.
But to be connected with the voice of reason when it comes to race calling, Bill Collins, is something I've never forgotten.
Yeah.
And to the day, unfortunately, when Bill passed, only about 2 or 3 weeks ago, he asked me to do some work for the greyhound industry, to go out to some pub tabs because he was connected with the Victorian Greyhound Board. I was doing that, and he wrote me a touching letter, and that was based on probably our association, because I reminded him the day when I was 10, and you invited me into your commentary box to show me how it all worked. So that's the type of people you get connected to when you get to a racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got to make sure that, well, the administrators have to make sure that there's an opportunity for fathers or whatever, or someone to take their kids to the races, and when the kids go, they have that magic. They walk. I feel like we've lost a bit of it, because part of the colour was the big rings, and that sort of drew people to go to the tracks. And
well, mate, in 1986, we won the under-19 premiership at Collingwood. Our first footy trip, or my first footy trip as an 18-year-old plus type of guy, was to Sydney. I'd read about it, I'd heard about it. It was the Randwick racetrack. I said to the boys, I said, I don't care where we're going, but we're going to One Joint tomorrow, and that's the Randwick racetrack. And I said, you're coming, we're all going, and we had the day out. But the first thing before we got downstairs and started to mix with the crowd and have a few drinks was, for me, to go through the betting ring. There was a sense of aura, intrigue, difference, rogue element that was in that, but it gravitated me to keep my eyes open, and I might learn something. Yeah. And it was just fascinating to be in there for 2 hours and just be a learner. With the people, they all played on me back, but I sat back and I just felt this aura about the Randwick racetrack.
Well, it was in that period that I was in Sydney, and I used to go to the races probably 3 times a month, and it was always a Saturday, and that I was completely fascinated with the Sydney ring and the characters, and it didn't take me long to learn who was who and who to watch the fight, who they were backing. So it was an amazing betting ring, and it was huge. I couldn't believe the volume of money. It was incredible.
I was sitting next to whoever it was, and some of the big bookmakers were there, and you just hear the bookmakers call out what the betting was and write it down on the ticket, and you say, someone had 100,000 on that horse, did I hear it right? And I'm only 18, I'm thinking, that can't be right.
That's one thing that racing has sort of missed. If you look at the AFL and some of the other sports now, one of the most successful things the AFL did, and they brought it in, it's well over a decade ago now, it was Vic Kick when it started, and it's now Auskick. You think about how many participants they have there, there's nothing like that for racing. There's no schools program or anything. They should be bringing groups of kids into the races and saying, right, let's go, take them through the jockey's room, take them through the steward's room, take them through the stabling, take them through the ring, and take them down to the stalls or wherever you wanted to do it, and really get them into the inner sanctum of what's happening. And I think if you do that, you might actually get some engagement. But now, for the kids, it's a jumping castle and an ice cream van, and right, away we go. We might get Kelly Sports in during the summertime. We seem to be still going strong in jumping. Should we cut that and do a part 3? Yes, we'll come back and we'll talk about footy, because we're on the eve of the footy season in part 3.